Hey every pony, I'm gonna be doing my first fanfic. It's about Trixie, and it's a tragedy tale. I'm gonna put a link in the description below. It's by Jay's Wing 103, and it's a tragedy hurt comfort story about Trixie and Twilight Sparkle. Here we go. Next to a clear reflective lake stood an all-familiar Azure. Am I saying that right? Yeah, Azure. Unicorn mare wearing a torn cape with a hat both with star patterns on them. She was looking at her rough, ragged reflection. She used to be beautiful. Once upon a time, she would look upon her reflection to find her coat smooth and glimmering in the moonlight. Not any more. Now mud caked her legs and underbelly, and one of her knees was raw from one she stripped. Her name was disheveled and messy, and the lines etched on her face made her seem older than she truly was. This was all her fault. After Azura morning incident, she lost her wagon and possessions. Nobody would hire her because she had spread to the world that she was a fraud. At least she still had her most important possessions, her hat, her cape. It was given to her by her mother, right before she died. Her mother was Azure Unicorn mare by dazzling violet eyes and her sunset red mane and tail and the sun shining bright. The bright red and yellow colors of the evening sky as the cutie mark. She was a better mother than she could have ever asked for. She always loved and supported Trixie enough for both herself and her father. Her father died in the weather-related accident right before she was born. She was a nutmeg brown Pegasus with deep blue eyes and a cloud shooting a light. Okay, never mind. Just, no, I'm sorry. I can't. Hey, every pony. I'm gonna be reading my first fanfic, so excuse me if it, sucks. It's by JSwing103. I'll put a link in the description for if you want to follow along with me and read it. But like I said, the names in this story are kind of weird, so if I pronounce them or screw it up, yeah, you'll know why. So without further ado, let's get into this thing. The story is called Trixie's Tale. Next to a clear reflective lake Next to a clear reflective lake stood an all-familiar Azure Unicorn mare wearing a torn cape and a hat, both with star patterns on them. She was looking at her rough, ragged reflection. She used to be beautiful. Once upon a time, she would look upon her reflection to find her coat smooth and glimmering in the moonlight. Not anymore. Now mud caked her legs and underbelly, and one of her knees was raw from when she tripped. Her name was disheveled and messy, and the lines etched onto her face made her seem older than she truly was. This was all her fault. After the Ursa Minor incident, she lost her wagon and possessions. Nobody would hire her because that mare had spread the word that she was a fraud. At least she still had her most important possessions, her hat, her cape. It was given to her by her mother, right before she died. Her mother was an Azure Unicorn mare with dazzling violet eyes and a sunset red mane and tail and a sun shining bright, the bright red and yellow colors of the evening sky as a cutie mark. She was a better mother than she could have ever asked for. She always loved and supported Trixie enough for both herself and her father. Her father had died in a weather-related incident right before she was born. He was a nutmeg brown Pegasus with deep blue eyes and a cloud shooting a lightning bolt into a twister as a cutie mark. Needless to say, he handled the more dangerous weather. Her father had died protecting them and everyone else in the village. One day, an unexpected tornado appeared. When he went to the twister to stop it, he did not, but not without a fatal injury. He was swung onto a sharp branch that had been broken off by the twister itself, right through the heart. He never stood a chance. The last exchange between him and her mother went like this. Her mother had collapsed a little ways away from the tree. Her husband was impaled on it. He took a raspy breath, blood trickling from his cheek and the corner of his mouth. Suddenly he smiled. "I thought of a name for her," he said in a voice weak. She stopped crying and looked at her, with her light mane covering in one of the bloodshot eyes. "What is it?" she asked him, tears drying on her cheeks. "Her name," he cut off, coughing up blood onto the ground and the floor in front of her. "Her name," he started again, "will be Trixie." She nodded her head in agreement. "That's a lovely name," she said, trying to make her voice sound strong and not break out crying again. He motioned with his hoof on her to get closer. That's exactly what she did. She stood so close to him that she could hear his shallow, ragged breathing, and attentively used his hoof to move her sunset red hair out of her eyes. "You have such lovely eyes. I hope our daughter inherits your beauty," he said. "I'm sure she will. I'm sure she'll inherit your strength and courage, too," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. He closed his midnight blue tears rolling down onto his face and said, "Goodbye, Dusklight. Take good care of our daughter. Goodbye, Storm Chaser. I'll give our daughter enough love for both of us." Oh no, that was the mom. All right. "Goodbye, Storm Chaser. I'll give our daughter enough love for the both of us," said Dusklight, her small frame racking her sorrow and pain. 15 years later, that same mare was lying in the hospital bed. She had been fighting cancer for 3 years now. Aw, man, this is gonna hit me hard. My grandpa just got cancer. He got chemo. This is gonna hit me hard. I might not be able to finish this story, guys. I'll try, but if things get too intense, oh my god, I'm probably gonna cry right on the spot. I'm getting a tear right now. All right. I gotta finish reading this. I'll stop and I'll take a break and I'll read either later on today or tomorrow. Anyway, 15 years later, that same mare was lying in the hospital bed. She had been fighting cancer for 3 years now. Her beautiful bright red mane and tail had fallen out. Aww. Standing beside her was her daughter, who had indeed inherited her mother's beauty. Her azure-colored coat and deep violet eyes had been inherited from her mother. Her mane, however, had not. It was very pale, and blue almost, silver in some places, and in the moonlight it seemed to glow. She had also inherited her father's strength and courage, being able to make it through her mother having cancer. She was always here every day, cheering her mother up with magic tricks she taught herself. Today was a special day, though. Neither knew. She was showing her mother new magic tricks she learned. The 14-year-old deep blue mare magicked out a normal black and white wand. With 2 waves of it, it turned into a bright bouquet of tulips, daisies, and I'm just gonna say rhododendrons. Alright. Ta-da! She said, giving them to her mother, who took them in her own telekinesis and clapped with her forehooves. She gently set them down in the small glass vase filled halfway with water. "And now for my grand final trick I have been working on for a while," the younger Trixie said, her mother watching attentively, expecting something amazing. What happened was more than just amazing. It was heart-touchingly beautiful. Trixie gathered her magic and let it out in one big burst, releasing a spectrum of colors. It took her a second, but when she realized what it was, her hoof flew in her mouth and she started crying. Trixie instantly got worried. "Mom, what's wrong? Do you not like it?" she asked, tears on her own beginning to form. Her mother shook her head and hugged her. It's beautiful," she whispered to her daughter. In the air, conjured by Trixie's magic, was a picture of Trixie in her lush green field holding hooves. Trixie was unable to hold back tears of her own now as they rolled down her cheeks. She laid her head down on Trixie's, and Trixie's on her shoulder. After a few minutes of silently crying, her mother lifted her head and smiled. "Hey, what's that on your flank?" she asked Trixie. Trixie lifted her head quizzically and said, "There's nothing on my—" As she turned her head around, her words she replaced by a sequel of joy, and she realized she had just gotten her cutie mark. Aww! It was a wand with a star on it and some magic dust. She pushed her head into her mother's warm body as she hugged her. Her mother chuckled and started stroking her mane, her beautiful mane. She continued this until she heard the soft snoring of her daughter. She smiled, wrapped a blanket over her, and pulled her into an embrace, allowing her daughter's warmth and rhythmic beats lull her to sleep. Alright, I think that's a good place to stop for now. I'll start another place. Oh, it's only 10 minutes. I can read a little more. I'll wait about 15 minutes or so. Alright. A few days later, it was Friday. Trixie had just returned from school. She noticed the wilted flowers in her vase and resolved to get some more later. She was about to show her mother some more tricks, like usual, when she stopped her. "I have a present for you, my daughter. Come over here," she called to Trixie. She did as told and went to her mother. Her mother levitated over a medium-sized box over her head. It was covered in red and white stripes, with a small red bow at the top. Trixie slowly opened the box, wondering what it was. She gasped in amazement and saw the contents inside. There was a cape folded neatly. On top of it was a magician's hat. They were both velvet, like her eyes, and had star patterns on them. "Mom, it's beautiful," she said, turning to her mother. She had her eyes half closed and had a sleepy look on her face. "I'm glad you like it, my daughter. I made it myself. It will be the last gift I ever give you. Your father is calling for me, and I have to go now," she said. "Aww. Aww." Trixie's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "No, Mom, no! You can't! Don't leave me here alone!" she said, hugging her mother. "I must. I know you'll be able to handle yourself. You inherited your father's strength and courage. My only regret is that I will not be able to see you turn into a great and powerful male you're destined to become." With those final words, her eyes closed, and Dustlight was no more. "Mommy, no!" "I'm sorry, it's nighttime. I can't yell." Alright, I'll try it. "Mommy, no!" Trixie screamed, pattered out into a whine, and then crying as she embraced her mother's corpse. When the medics arrived, it took 5 of them to pry her from her body. A tear dropped disturbingly the reflection as she remembered these events, the events that shaped her into the mare that she was today. Her mother believed that she would become great and powerful, so that's just what she did. She became the great and powerful Trixie. That's nice. Another tear drop sent ripples along the water, just as it was setting back down. "It's been 7 years now, hasn't it? And I still can't let go." Oh, that was Trixie. "It's been 7 years now, and I still can't let go," she continued as she turned her gaze to her right gravestone. "What would you think, Mother?" Twilight sighed. She was at the entrance of the Everfree forest. She couldn't believe she was doing this, and in the middle of the night, too. She remembered the events that led to her being here. Twilight was sitting on her desk, various newspapers strung about on the floor. They all had the same topic, though. Some of the topics include fraud, ran out of town, phony exposed for who she really is, and the most recent one, which was sitting on her desk, the great and powerful, or fake and egotistical. Sweet, I got that word down. I feel so smart. This was the one she was currently reading. On the cover was a very familiar dark and blue-haired unicorn. The unicorn known as the Great and Powerful Trixie. The Great and Powerful are fake and egotistical. Today the unicorn, the Great and Powerful Trixie, visited Hoofington. When she tried to sell off her financial tales, she was chased away. Thanks to one Twilight Sparkle, No one in town would ever be fooled by the mayor's lies. She was last sent heading towards the Everfree Forest. Twilight put down the newspaper. This had been going on for a few months now. Ever since she had showed up, she thought it would wear down eventually. But she was wrong. It seems as though Trixie was chased out of every town, and it was all her fault. She had just wanted for Trixie to stop bragging so much. Twilight sighed, again pulling back into reality. She was going to go tomorrow, but the guilt had eaten away at her. She decided it was time or never, and stepped into the forest. She started searching for clues as to where Trixie had gone. She knew how astronomical the odds were of finding her in the dark, but still she searched. After a few minutes, she found something. A small light. Alright, I think that's a good place to stop for now. How much? It's about 15 minutes. Alright, I'm gonna stop right now. So far, I think it's pretty interesting. It'd be better if I was a better voice actor. But again, this is my first one, so yeah, I think it's going pretty good so far. Alright, I'm gonna do the next part right now. Right now.